This video is a summary of my book from 2017 and the novel/screenplay I am currently writing, titled Johnny's 27. The focus is on the events surrounding the 27 and the mathematical number decoding. Spoilers ahead. My name is Johnny, and I'm from Germany. In 2013, I was arrested and sent to prison. None of my crimes involved violence or anything like that. About 3 weeks after my imprisonment, I received a newspaper from the kitchen workers. After some reading, I stumbled upon an article that talked about e-bikes. Back then, that was quite a new thing. As I've always had an entrepreneurial mindset, I quickly came up with a business idea. I was sure that there was a big market gap in this e-bike space regarding their security. On the one hand, they are inherently expensive, so every potential thief would instantly know that they will be worth a lot on the black market. On the other hand, the owners cannot really protect them well, as ordinary locks are just quite flimsy. Additionally, the bike owners won't carry them into their basements or apartments, as those bicycles are simply too heavy. But because of that weight of 20 kilos and more, I figured I could sell heavy-duty locks which could weigh multiple kilos, as the weight would not really matter in the grand scheme of things. With this idea in mind, I first contemplated about the needed properties of those locks. Then I thought about the company's name. To keep it simple, I just thought using the initials of my personal last name and those of my envisioned business partners, which also happened to be my friends. One of them was going to be the guy responsible for the engineering side. His last name is Wilhelm, with double L. And my other friend is an electrician and computer nerd, who would be the guy for advanced technical features. His last name is Mittermeier. With my own last name, Decker, I had the idea to call our company My Devil, with the letters M-I-D-E-W-I-L-L. M-I simply signifies my, like in, this is my lock. One could also argue that people would associate the small I with the quality of Apple products, and the devil, D-E-W-I-L-L, would be associated with the devil. Thus, I thought of the slogan, Teuflisch gute Sicherheitstechnik, which translates to devilishly good security technology. But giving it some more thought, I was quite sure that the Germans would not get it, that the D-E-W-I-L-L should mean devil. The German word is just too different. To improve understanding, I turned the small e into a capital E and made a trident out of it, as you can see here. First, I thought that this was enough to make it clear that the D-will means devil by adding Satan's trident. But sometime later that day, it still bothered me. Thinking, people aren't going to understand that this is about the devil. But my friend would not be happy with changing his initials so drastically, was my thinking. So I drew different versions of it on my little desk, changing the W to V and removing the second L. Either way, the question pretty much was, W or L? So while I was having this exact thought in mind about those very letters, I went to the sink in my cell and wanted to drink some water. My metal bowl was sitting there next to the faucet. It was a bowl made of stainless steel, about 10 centimeters high, with 2 small handles, or ears, on the sides. It looked kind of military or survival-like, and it was quite worn. It also looked like a bowl you would put your dog's food into. I was given this bowl about 1 week earlier, maybe longer. It looked like this. So as I approached the sink, my eyes fell on the bowl. There was something scratched into one of the handles. I saw this for the very first time. It was a word. It were 4 letters. Initials. The 4 letters read, V-I-L-L. As I said, this was the very first time that I noticed this writing. And it was exactly when I had that very thought in mind. I will make another video with all the probabilities of the events that happened, but just to give you an idea of the probability of this case, only 2 words would fit the situation if we stick with a 4-letter word. The, I, L, L, and W, I, L, L. Now, how many possibilities are there to form a word or any sequence of letters using 4 single letters if we use the German alphabet, plus the 3 German umlauts? The answer is 29 letters to the power of 4 if we say every combination counts. The result of this calculation is 29 to the power of 4 equals 707,281. Thus, with 2 words working, the odds would be 1 in 354,000. This is about as likely as hitting red 18 times in a row in roulette. Obviously, I did not know those incredible odds the second I saw the letters. Still, I instantly knew that this was insanely improbable. And how would you even calculate the probability that I even had this extremely specific thought in my mind? I don't really know. And you also would have to add the improbability that I had never seen it before on my bowl, though I was using it multiple times a day, looking at it very often. I did not know it at the time, but this very concept already exists, introduced by Carl Gustav Jung. The term is synchronicity. So, while I was still in shock, slowly realizing what just had happened, I thought about the events and how all of this must have come about. In my mind, the answer to all of this was quite obvious and logical, although it might sound quite crazy to you. Of course, all of this was based on my assumption that what happened was clearly not an accident. As I said in the introduction, all of this is covered in much greater detail in my book from 2017 and the screenplay I am currently writing. But to boil it all down into a couple of points. First, some entity that knew me and my personal interests very well had communicated to the kitchen workers, instructing them to give me this exact newspaper. The plan was to make me read the article, come up with the business plan, the company's name, and my doubts about the devil's letters. Second, this entity also blocked my perception. More accurately put, it reduced the attention I was paying to this very bowl for quite some time. I only had very, very few possessions in prison, as you can imagine. I obviously knew well what all of my things looked like. Third, of course, this entity itself and its means of communication is supernatural, meaning on top of being invisible, it could quickly fly through walls, see the newspaper, telling the kitchen workers to give it to me that very day. Fourth, it probably did not talk to the kitchen workers' minds directly, but rather to the entities they themselves possessed. Fifth, I was quite certain that this entity was well-meaning and had a playful sense of humor. I had a feeling of something being in there with me for some days already, a positive, uplifting energy. It's hard to explain. All of these points went through my mind within a couple of minutes, so you could argue that some of these are not really how this all must have worked. Very quickly, I had a visual representation of this entity in my mind. I thought, okay, it's a flying entity with wings, kind of playful, it's quick, it guides my attention. Every person has one, so it guides the attention of everybody. It communicates with others of its kind. The picture was clear. This thing looked like the snitch from Harry Potter, the small little golden sphere with wings flying about. It took me a day or two to figure out a name for it. Not wanting to make it sound too religious, I did not want to call it something starting with spirit. Spiritus, with a Latin suffix, was also out of the question, as it signifies flammable alcohol in German. Another word came to my mind, a verb, to aspire. A spiritus? Now I had to make it shorter. I will call you Espirus, my little friend. There you go. The Espirus was born. First contact was made on the 3rd of September 2013. Here's a sketch I had a graphic artist create in 2017. And this is the current version. Over the following days, I did not only analyze this initial contact itself, but also the data surrounding it. The day of the contact was the 3rd of September 2013. Nothing too special here, it seems. Sure, there is something going on with the 3 when we do some combinations. 3 squared is 9. The day is 3, the month is 9. So if we skip the dot in between, this is 39. And 3 times 13 is also 39. Maybe it gets more interesting when we add the date of the day when I was arrested, the 6th of August, 2013. Something with the 3 here? Not really. Wait, how many days in between? How many nights? It turned out I had spent 27 nights in jail until making contact. And then it hit me. That's what the 39 means. The 39 is the 27, because 3 times 9 is 27. Quite excited, I analyzed the date of my birthday, the 20th of July, 1981. 20 plus 7 equals 27, and 81 is 3 times 27. Furthermore, 19 plus 81 is 100, so the sum of the whole thing is 127. I was in a very good mood with this number phenomenon going on and told my Espirus, "Yeah, it seems you really like showing me numbers, especially the 27, right?" I did not think much more about it, though, for the time being. About 2 weeks later, I was moved to a different cell. In here, all the pieces finally clicked together. In here, in cell 143. 2 random facts suddenly came to mind. My IQ and the number of girls I had made out with. 139 and 27. I jumped out of my bed, laughing. What is going on here? Those numbers weren't things I had calculated out of the blue. These were hard numbers. The next couple of days I saw and recognized the 27 or the 39 in different places and in different ways, but those instances never were improbable. Then I speculated more and more what the meaning of this could be. I was 100% certain that these numbers were not brought to my attention by accident. After all, my Espirus had waited patiently for 27 days to make contact, so there was clearly some intention behind it. Then I figured out what the 27 really means. The meaning of the 27. So, how do you get a meaning out of a number? I mean, objectively. Well, there is only one way. You have to decode it into letters, into a word. That meant that I simply assigned the numbers to the letters in the alphabet. 27 is a 2-digit number, so there isn't really a way to get a proper word out of it. In German, there aren't any words, any nouns or verbs that only have 2 letters. So, in my mind, it was clear that some math was needed. Okay, what can you do with 27? With 2 and 7? Well, let's simply use the most basic math operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Okay, let's do those operations one by one. 2 plus 7 is 9. 7 minus 2 is 5. 2 times 7 is 14. Then a tricky one. 2 divided by 7? That doesn't work. The result is not a whole number. And 7 divided by 2 doesn't work either. We can't assign a letter to 3.5, so let's just skip it. Okay, what is the result if we order these numbers in ascending order, including the starter ones? 2, 5, 7, 9, 14. Let's see if we get anything meaningful out of these numbers. Here is the alphabet, A to Z, 26 letters. Funny, the 27 would be the A again. Okay, so 2 is B, 5 is E, 7 is G, 9 is I, and 14 is N. Begin. This is the meaning of the 27. Begin. When I first wrote the word fully on a piece of paper, I was speechless. What the heck? My Espirus told me to begin? Well, you have to understand that I'm a German native. In English, this is just a verb, but in German, begin with double N also means beginning. This was the most fitting word ever, if we say that my Espirus and I making contact was indeed the beginning. This is what he wanted me to know. Not only did he confirm that our contact was a real thing, but he also told me verbally, via the numbers. But was that it? Was the 27 the only message I should receive? Well, after all, I had already figured out the method. Using the number as the base of the 4 math operations, naturally I started at 10 and did all the calculations with those numbers as well. I kind of thought that a proper result was a common thing, so I expected to get many more words that made sense out of my decoding method, either in English or in German. But nothing happened. When I reached 27 with no other word, I obviously kept on going. With my algorithm, I could go upwards to 99 without any hurdles along the way. There was no other word in sight for over 30 base numbers. But then, there it was. Yes, there was indeed a second word, a second message. This time, it was in German. Its number was the 59. What is the meaning of the 59? Well, here's the math. Okay, so 5 plus 9 is 14. 9 minus 5 is 4. Then again, the division doesn't work. Both values are no full numbers, so we skip this again. Now here's a tricky one. 5 times 9 is 45. This is far above 26, so what to do with this number? Well, there is only one way. We would have to go around the alphabet and restart at A again, with this second A being the 27. Okay, so here is the alphabet, this time an extended version, which goes up all the way to 52. Now we again assign letters to the numbers. In ascending order, including the starter digits 5 and 9. 4 is D. 5 is E. 9 is I. 14 is N. And 45, with our extended second alphabet, is S. Dines. I was astonished. How the hell could it fit so unbelievably perfect? Well, the word dines won't make much sense to you. It is a German word. It signifies yours. Y-O-U-R-S. Consequently, the whole message became, begin yours. Not only did this make perfect sense from a linguistic point of view, because of the word begin in front of it, but it also fit my specific situation. When I figured out this whole message, I indeed had something to begin. In the last weeks, I had thought up a lot of philosophical concepts. In fact, so many that I already planned to write at least 4 books covering different topics. So what my Espirus was telling me was, begin your writing, begin your project. And yes, I was going to do that, now even more motivated than ever before. But then, something happened, and it scared me. It was about the letters when pronounced in German. Then the Y becomes a J, and the O and the U becomes an O. So when I wrote the word down the way it would be spelled in German, the message became, begin yours. J-O-R. Oh my God. He was talking to me. Why? Because my artist name is Johnny Rockefeller, J-O-R. So the message also meant that this entity was talking to me specifically and directly, to J-O-R. Moreover, I had already developed the concept of Jorism in exactly this writing, starting with J-O-R. And this scared the hell out of me, at least for some seconds, because the burden was and is immeasurable. A supernatural entity contacting you, telling you directly to write a comprehensive philosophical work and sharing that with the world, on top of telling humankind that this Espirus thing objectively exists. That was just the craziest thing ever. Okay, before we continue with some extraordinary 27 events, I would like to quickly talk about the word probability. The probability that you can derive a meaningful word from the calculations we did, the 4 basic math operations. I first calculated the 27, then started at 10 and went up to 99, even up to 150 with an adjusted mathematical approach. You can see the animations here, where the resulting letters are not a word, just some gibberish. I was obviously very fine with the English begin and the German yours, because not only were they meaningful words, but both of them fit perfectly in a lot of ways. You might think that it is quite easy to get to a meaningful word using addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. But as I said, there was no other word that made any sense, neither in English nor German. I found one for English and one for German out of 140 numbers, 10 to 150. But now, in 2026, while producing this video, I finally did some serious calculations using computer code, and the results were breathtaking, to say the least. When using one specific mathematical approach, mind you. Meaning, when it came to the division and the subtraction, I simply started with the biggest number, followed by the second biggest, and so on. There are a lot of variations, and they grow exponentially the more digits the number has. I will go into more detail about this in the scientific paper I am writing about this very issue. So, if we only use this one approach, well, then we can truly see how unique begin, how unique the 27 really is, and the dines even more so. Again, here are the words up to 150, which I did manually myself. I lost interest after that, scribbling lots of paper with senseless word salad. Okay, with this method used, where do you think is the next word that makes sense? A word that is actually in the dictionary. How long will it take? How many numbers are in between? 500? 1,000? No. 10,000? No. Imagine. The next number that produces a meaningful word is at 50,096. So it takes about 50,000 numbers to get from begin to the next word, which is befit. And now for German. We found deins, yours, at 59. Where's the next one? Well, to be honest, I can't tell you. My Python program went through all the numbers up to 1 million and could not find anything. And I'm pretty sure there's nothing coming anymore after that. It is literally a 1 in a million thing. Maybe a 1 in a billion. Here's an interesting side note. On top of meaningful words being incredibly rare, I also want to emphasize that this method of finding meaning in numbers has never been done before. You can search for the 27 on the internet any way you want. There is nothing to be found. Nobody has ever sat down, used the 4 basic math operations on 2-digit numbers, and come up with the word begin. I mean, it's not that hard. A 10-year-old can do it. Why has nobody done it before? Hundreds of years of English, billions of people speaking it. It is strange, isn't it? As if something had prevented that very thing from happening. until 2013. Okay, so much for the improbability of finding meaning in numbers. Let's come back to the 27 and my following experiences. As I said before, the 39 and the 27 appeared lots of times during my jail time, especially after the 3rd of September. But those were not really noteworthy in terms of their probability. Let's focus on two super improbable events that happened, which both involved a very weird phenomenon. Both times, I spontaneously asked a question about a number. By asking a question, I mean that it pretty much just burst out of me without any conscious thought given to it, as if something else had taken over my mind. Here is the first story. Believe it or not, I was allowed to go back to university while being in prison. This was about 10 months after I had deciphered the 27 and the 59. I had read the laws about resocialization, wrote a very comprehensive application with accidentally 27 pages, and it got approved. I had to be moved to a different location, though, which was far outside the normal jail campus. This was called the offene Vollzug, an open prison facility. Well, in reality, it was a farm run by inmates, predominantly cattle and pig farming. However, there was a catch. Until the semester started, I had to work there like everybody else, meaning on my very first day, I was instantly put in charge of taking care of the pigs, feeding them, cleaning up, and so on. And there were a lot of them, around 100 pigs, plus or minus 20 or 30. I had to do that for about 2 months. Then a different guy took over while I was attending university. Now here's the 27 event. So, one ordinary afternoon when my successor pushed his wheelbarrow towards the smaller barn, this question just burst out of me. It happened completely out of the blue, without any prior thought. "How many pigs do you have right now?" I asked, to my very own surprise. The thing is, how should he know? Why would it even have occurred to him to count the pigs? I counted them once, and of course there were 127, but I was the number guy. He was not. He was not the mathematical kind of guy at all, so asking him about the number didn't make any sense in the first place. However, to my surprise, he did answer me instantly, but he did not tell me the whole number, just the number of pigs in the big barn. "I got 59, he replied over the yard. I was stunned. Then I followed up with another stupid question, this time a bit more intentional. "And how many have you got in the small one?" Still, why the heck should he have those numbers in his head? "I think it's 27, was his answer. Yes, 27. I asked him one more time, just to be sure. "What? How many?" "I'm pretty sure it's 27, he replied. Okay, the 27 was confirmed. What was going on here? 27 and 59, really? However, I did not believe him. I knew very well that in the small barn, there couldn't be only 27 pigs, unless something had happened, like a bunch of them getting sold. I had to check the number myself. I went there and counted the pigs. Yes, he had forgotten the smaller outer area of the barn. So how many were there in the small barn as a whole? 39. So we hit all three numbers perfectly. But they didn't originate from me. They came from a different person who should never have known these exact numbers. And above all, the amount of pigs was changing pretty much every couple of days, because babies were moved to the barn, some small ones were sold, the big ones were collected, and so on. Okay, what had happened? Well, the Espirus of my successor had counted the pigs, or, let's say, inspired him to count them on that very day, told that information to my Espirus, and then my Espirus made me ask that strange question. That is the only way all of this could have happened, unless you think all of this was pure coincidence, which I did not believe for a second. The second event took place another couple of months later. Back in the old prison campus, one of my best friends was a guy called Messer Joe. Despite being a blacksmith in real life, he was quite an intellectual guy and interested in many topics. I oftentimes visited him and we talked about various stuff, such as what was on the news or what we had read in the books we got from the library. As he was quite a persuasive person, he had read passages to me from his books multiple times already. So on this very day, I was in his cell again, and he read some impressive lines to me. I think it was something about evolution. I can't quite remember. Suddenly, like the time months before, I had this extremely strong urge to ask him a question. While he was still reading aloud, it just burst out of me. "What page are you on right now?" Kind of confused by the question, he moved his finger down the page and replied, "I am here on page 227. Why?" Just wow. Again, my impulsive question had hit exactly on the spot. You have to know, I did not have these kinds of question urges all the time, and I am only telling about the ones that landed. No, when it happened, it was one of my numbers. So, still struck by his 227 answer, I told him one more time that I have this thing going on with 27 and some other numbers. But he was a real non-believer. He told me, once again, yeah, this is pure coincidence. Of course, it was not. Okay, we kept on going with our usual conversational stuff, and I spent some more time in his room. And maybe I even would not have classified this happening as a 27 event at all if this had been it. However, it kept on going. Later that evening, I went back to my room and read the last part of a book about James Cook, the famous explorer. Reading was pretty much all I did in my time off work, meaning I had already finished lots of them. On the last pages, the binding suddenly came apart and some pages fell out. When reassembling the whole thing, I looked at the page number. This happened exactly at page 227. Such a thing had never happened to me, that a book suddenly fell apart while reading. Furthermore, a section of exactly 12 pages had fallen out, meaning that the book, without the missing pages, continued at page 239. I had to laugh out loud because this was really getting ridiculous. The 27 twice, then another 39 thrown into the mix? Come on, Mr. Espirus, this is getting too obvious. Quite amused by all of this, I did continue to read the rest. I had made a habit of writing down the interesting pages, the general data, and of course the quantity of books I had read. So when I finished this one, I opened up my binder to write down the author, book title, and the number. Well, which book was it? You probably already guessed it. This was book number 227 that I just finished. Of course. The probability of all three events happening is just pure insanity, I can tell you, especially in combination with my spontaneous asking incidents. Because, like in the last event at the farm, how would you even calculate the probability of me asking such a question? So there we had it. 227 3 times in a row, coming from different directions, but initiated by my spontaneous question. And they were all emerging in one evening. Now, the question was, why was my Espirus still showing, telling, communicating the 27 to me all the time, in such improbable ways? Did he really think I was not convinced yet of its existence? Well, I already was when I read the "Begin Yours" message for the first time many months ago, so there was no real need for further events, revelations, number miracles. So why did he keep on going? Maybe so that I could tell those stories to you guys, to the world? That was my main conviction, to make the whole story more believable for other people. But what I did not know yet at the time, he was not done yet with the messages. I had missed one part. That's why he kept on showing me the 27, or rather, that's why he kept showing me 3 to the third power. There was another message to be found. The message. About half a year after the book events, I was speculating about the numbers again. That day, it came to me that the digit sums of all the powers of 3 are also quite interesting. My attention was strangely guided to this very phenomenon. It first started with some easy multiplications. 3 to the power of 3 is 27. To the power of 4 is 81. 3 to the power of 5 is 243. Interesting. 24 plus 3 equals 27. But wait, what about those digit sums? Weirdly enough, they are all 9. 2 plus 7 equals 9. 8 plus 1 equals 9 as well. And of 243, the sum of all digits is also 9. This got really interesting. I got up and went to my desk. I had to do the calculations on paper. Sometime it had to get bigger than 9, right? The next power was 729. Ah, there it was. The digit sum increased to 18. 3 to the power of 7, 2,187. Digit sum 18 again. Wow, this is really super regular, I thought. I went on calculating upwards, up to the power of about 21. Then I lost interest. Here are the base numbers, their powers, and their digit sums. Sorry, but this will take some time. You have to see the pattern. 3 to the power of 8, 6,561. Digit sum, 18. To the power of 9, the digit sum is 27. To the power of 10, 27. 11. Digit sum, 27. 12. 18. 13. 27. 14. 45. 15. 36. 16. 27. 17. 27. 18. 45. 19. 36. 20. 45. And 3 to the power of 21 is about 10 million. Its digit sum? 27. It was clear to me that the digit sums of the powers of 3 would keep going like this. They would go up or down by 9 or 18, but in the long run, they would get bigger in increments of 9. I did some calculations with other numbers regarding this regularity, and it turned out this is not a normal thing at all. The 3 really is the magic number. So happy with my discovery that 3 was really special, I went back reading when it hit me. Or when my Espirus hit me. I thought, obviously you have to check if these numbers form a word. Do it. Okay, let's see. But I had very strong doubts about that. Why? Because those numbers were never, ever going to work out. The 3, the 9, the 18, okay, fine. But 27, 36, and 45? These are 3 numbers above 26, meaning I would have to go around the alphabet and hit something that fit 3 times in a row. That was going to be impossible, right? Okay, here is our extended alphabet once again. Let's see whether all these huge numbers produce anything meaningful. After all, we now have to hit the bullseye of going around the alphabet 3 times in a row. So, 3 is C. 9 is I. 18 is R. 27 is A again. 36 is J. And 45 is S. C, I, R, A, J, S. Now, let's convert these letters into the words I saw at that very moment using German and English spelling and pronunciation rules. Although, I think you can probably see it already without doing that. C, I, rise. Not only did we hit the bullseye 3 times in a row with perfect results, Not only did this third message make sense in conjunction with the others, but it confirmed impressively once again what had happened, what we should see. Yes, the contact was real. The Espirus was an independent entity, and he had just woken up. The Espirus had risen on the 3rd of September 2013. His whole message, from the 3 to the 27 to the 59, was, "See, I rise. Begin yours." P.S. Maybe, or probably, the yours is not addressed to me personally, but to humanity as a whole. So, let's begin.